Geek Out! Bleep blop bloop gamers. This is Sam, and we're here for another installment of this video game podcast of mine and my buddy Zack. Zack, say hey to the kiddies.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, as we've kind of intimated with last month's episode, we're going to be talking about Mario Brothers, but not Super Mario Brothers. I think a lot of people don't know there's actually a Mario Brothers game before that where he's not super, he's just a straight up plumber man. Yeah. All he does is just kind of run around. And before that, he was the villain like the previous year, because this game, Mario Brothers, comes out in 83. The previous year, he was the villain in Donkey Kong Jr. So, I mean, Zach, what are some of your memories with this arcade title, which then was ported
with Mario Brothers?
Yeah, original Mario Brothers.
Yeah, gosh, my earliest memories of Mario Brothers is one, just being how hard it is, because, the first time I ever played it was in the bonus levels of Super Mario Brothers 3, and then right away you're being introduced to a completely different play style than Super Mario Bros. 3. So it's just like, hey, I don't know what's going on. There's these enemies coming at me from every which angle. I'm already dead. I'm already back to Super Mario Bros. 3. But then I actually went back and played the original Mario Brothers on a Nintendo. Mm-hmm. My only instance of ever seeing it in the arcade was either it would be at places and it's out of order, or it was at MagFest where I got to try it out. And it controls better than Donkey Kong did, where he could barely move at all. It still found him to be a bit slippery. But one thing that I do particularly enjoy is just if you're doing two players with Mario Brothers, is just completely screwing over the other person.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, it's definitely one of my first experiences of playing a multiplayer game that can destroy friendships.
Yeah. And this, you do bring up a good point. This is the game that introduces Luigi. I'm just like muttering on my words, but and in this game he isn't physically any different. He's just a color swap.
Exactly.
Also, this is the first game where Mario is a plumber, because in Donkey Kong he's technically a carpenter, like Fix-It Felix.
Yeah, and that whole game took place at a construction site.
Yeah. Whereas with this one, it's explicitly stated they're in the sewers of New York City. They're not in the Mushroom Kingdom. The Mushroom Kingdom doesn't exist yet. He's just yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's kind of like they're still finding their way, but we're starting to see more and more of those familiar tropes kind of be introduced.
Yeah, you had the creatures in the pipe. Their job was to get rid of the creatures that were coming out of the pipes. Mm-hmm. And then we were introduced to a lot of things. Luigi, and even though they weren't like warp pipes per se, mm-hmm. there were creatures coming out of them. So you had like your entryway, if you will. Coins. Like the sound effect, I think is slightly different than Super Mario Brothers, and then of course the POW block.
Oh yeah.
Which I think its most recent stable is probably Mario Kart, where it's been implemented recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's also the I guess they're not called Koopa Troopas here, but the Shell Creepers.
Yeah, Shell Creepers. Yeah. Not the catchiest name at all.
No, and what are the crab things? They're like, are they just straight up called crabs?
That's a good question. I
feel like the sidesteppers.
Yeah, I was just playing it right before this podcast too.
I think the only other thing I've seen sidesteppers in is like Koopa Troopa Beach in Mario 64.
Okay, yeah.
Because you can slip, they're on the beaches and you can slip on them.
Yeah,
if you run
wipe out on them.
Yeah, that's the only other time I've ever seen crab-like beings in a Mario game. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's one of the only instances I can think of as well.
Did you ever play Mario Clash, which is basically a stereo, a 3D version of this on the Virtual Boy?
Never touched the Virtual Boy, actually. I mean, my only experience with a Virtual Boy, it was just it's only been in flyers, and there was like the kid playing it, and then they're super happy, and I was like, we gotta get a Virtual Boy, and my dad looks at the price, he's like, no.
How much was the Virtual Boy at launch? Do you remember right offhand?
Offhand, I don't, but it was a lot more than he was willing to pay.
Yeah, which was a wise decision on his part, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've messed around with Virtual Boys before. They will just destroy
$180.
and that's $180 in like 1990.
Yeah, in 1990.
Yeah, like 96 or something, 95. Which God, that I'm trying to think the number of good games on the Virtual Boy, and I think the only ones would be like Mario Tennis.
Mario Clash is Mario Clash and Mario Tennis are probably the only ones.
There was a Wario game as well that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, a lot of really my memories of this original Mario Brothers are really just the bonus stages in Super Mario Brothers 3. There isn't a lot of, which is competitive, right?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
only if you're playing with another person.
Sure, yeah. Whereas I think a lot of people with this original one, it's kind of lost on them. This is technically a cooperative game. You're technically trying to wipe out everybody. I mean, yeah, you're playing for high score, but you're not explicitly told to screw over the other player.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why this is more of a competitive game, two reasons. One, each player has their own score. So as soon as you see that, you're going to immediately have a pissing contest with trying to get the higher score than the other player. The other thing is that you can't, if you work together, you have to be really in sync with each other because there's collision everywhere. There's collision between the players, there's collision between the enemies, and platforms. You can't really go through each other like in some co-op games where it's just like you don't even notice the other person. So it can be co-op. It's a lot more difficult to do so.
Yeah.
So
it's also I mean, it gets harder as it goes. Not only is there's more enemies, there's different kinds of enemies. The stages start to get there starts to be ice on the stage. We're talking pre-ice climbers kind of terrain.
Yeah.
And when the enemies just get faster too.
At that point, it's every man for himself.
Yeah, it just becomes chaos. And then playing this on NES Remix, where it starts to zoom out on some of the challenge stages, and you're just like, my God,
Oh, that just made me want to play NES Remix.
I love NES Remix. Both of those titles are some of the most fun I have on the Wii U. Did they ever port it over to the Switch?
No, not yet. No talk of that.
Man, that's one of the things. Obviously, there's some top shelf titles on the Switch, and we're getting more. We're getting another Mario game soon. We just got a Mario Rabbids crossover.
Yes, and it is a lot of fun. Yeah. I was pleasantly surprised.
How does it? Did you ever play XCOM beforehand?
Never played XCOM, but everyone compares it to that. I think I was just too young for XCOM at the time, so it was just completely lost on me.
Sure, because that's the first thing I think of when I see the gameplay in Mario Rabbids or whatever. But I'm kind of surprised that Nintendo hasn't. I mean, I guess the console hasn't even been out for a year. The console hasn't even been out for 9 months. But
yeah, has it been a full year?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't have a lot of those ports or a virtual console stand-in or subscription service ready. I thought they were for sure going to have that ready, or at least announce it officially at E3.
Yeah, it's funny the way they're going about it. It's at the same time this console launch, it was rushed and also calculated. Because it came out in March and it's boom, let's get this out, and then it was all these high quality first party games and it's boom, let's get these out too, and now we have a plethora of games to choose from, and they got a sweet lineup and the year's not even over yet. It still seems bare bones in some areas.
Yeah, not quite like Wii U bare bones, because I remember that launch being pretty light, but now that I'm thinking about launches, this game that we're ostensibly talking about, Mario Brothers, wasn't a big success at launch.
Yeah, I think it was just maybe if it were launched earlier, right after Donkey Kong, I think it could have had some legs. But it's just, I mean, it's tough because Super Mario Brothers came out right after this, and then
Yeah.
it's just a completely unfair comparison between the two games at that point.
Well, I also think this game is kind of a step back developmentally because there's like a clear sense of progression with Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're going stage to stage and you're seeing Mario and or Donkey Kong Jr. chase the antagonist to the next stage. Whereas with Mario Brothers, it's just like, okay, here's the same stage, but it's a little harder and a little faster this time. Have fun.
I mean, I don't know. I know. I disagree to an extent. For instance, I always think of it as a balloon fighter, where once the enemy's down for the count, you touch them and knock them over. However, Balloon Fighter came out a lot later than this game did. However, and that had the same formula, where it's just like, hey, this you have your objective, and it's the same thing. The stage is just progressively harder and different coat of paint.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess where it really shines is if you can find another person to play with, and then just
Yeah.
we're just watching you two go at each other at the same time while all these enemies are coming after you. One of my favorite things to do was just being underneath another player and just constantly hitting above them, and they could not move at all.
In a lot of ways, this is like Nintendo's first serious foray into multiplayer games, period, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is also kind of forgotten. And it isn't alternating multiplayer.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, a lot of those games are just like, oh, hey, I died. Now it's your turn. I died. Now it's your turn.
Mm-hmm. Whereas this one's simultaneous, right? Like you're saying, it is chaos because there's two players on the screen just running around, wreaking havoc. So I think that's lost on a lot of people nowadays too. A lot of people that think that the same people that think Super Mario Brothers is like the origins of the entire franchise, of the entire company.
Yeah, it really depends on who you're talking to, because someone who's not well versed with all of the titles, especially back in the early 1980s, they're just going to call it Mario Brothers for short, and everyone's going to assume that you're talking about Super Mario Brothers. But then you blow their mind saying like, oh no, there's an actual game that's just titled Mario Brothers. This is what it looks like. Oh, what? I've never even seen that before.
Yeah, I mean it's in a way, it's an interesting step in the evolution of the most famous video game character of all time. So I think that's where this game kind of stands, I guess, on the greater pantheon. But again, there isn't a whole lot of depth, but that's a nice kind of like history lesson behind it all. Now, Zach, do you have any other memories of Mario Bros. Before we put a pin in this one and then jump into the Super Series next time?
Yeah, actually, I think another strong point of this game is some of the re-releases of this that came after. Like, for instance, with Super Mario Bros. 3 with the bonus levels. I think another way that they made something old new again was when they added objectives. Like, for instance, if you're going head-to-head with another player, they had this objective like, hey, first to kill 5 enemies wins. And you can compete in that sense. Or, hey, first person to collect 5 coins wins. And that works, because then it gets really cutthroat. I think if these mechanics were introduced back then, rather than, oh, hey, surviving at the highest score, I think it could have gotten some more quarter stacked at the arcade.
Yeah. Again, yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, a lot of people don't know how expansive and how, I think people underestimate how much of an impact this game has. But yeah, we're still early days Nintendo, but you're about to see the Mario that everybody knows and loves unequivocally next time. Well, this has been another installment of our little video game deep dive, the video game archives, as we kind of dusted off 1983's Mario Brothers. Tune in next time. We've got the original Super Mario Brothers that basically makes Mario a household name. No longer Jumpman, no longer Mr. Video, straight up Mario. Zach, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
This has been another Geek Out production. If you enjoyed what you heard, hey, we've got a special episode every Friday. Of course, there's the usual catching up show every Wednesday, and you get book club episodes just about every Tuesday these days. Thanks for listening.